the pages of the Bible. And so what the pattern was that the people of Israel would wander away from God, they would worship idols, and then a foreign army would invade them, and then God would raise up a new leader to kind of set them free, and there were these judges. Over 330 years, that's how they were ruled. Finally, at the end of 330 years, Israel kind of looked around at all the other nations, and they thought to themselves, boy, all the other nations have kings. Why don't we have a king? I wish we had a king, God. And they went to their priesthood and to their prophets, and they said, we want a king just like all the other nations did. And God said, listen, if I give you a king, he's going to inscript your young men to fight his armies. He's going to take your daughters to be his cooks. He's going to tax you heavily. All of these negative things are going to come on you. And they said, we don't care. We want a king really bad. Give us a king. And that's kind of like the kid, who just wants what he wants when they want it. And so finally God says, all right, we'll give you a king. And so he tells Samuel. Samuel is kind of like the pastor of Israel at this time. And Samuel goes and anoints a man named Saul. And Saul is a very tall, imposing man who becomes the first king of Israel. Things go well with Saul for a few years, but Saul's heart wanders away from God, and God is grieved that he made Saul king. And so in 1 Samuel 15:28, we read these. This is an important text here. Samuel goes and talks to Saul, and he says to him, the Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel away from you this day, and has given it to a neighbor of yours who is better than you. Wow, those are tough words. Imagine getting a message from God. You're a leader, but you're not very good anymore. So I'm going to make you the not leader, and somebody else who's better than you is going to take your job. And Saul, as you can imagine, doesn't say, "Well, you're right. I really screwed up." Takes off his crown, turns it in, and says, "Fine, I'll resign. You find a new king." No, Saul is stubborn, and Saul continues to be the king for many, many years. But during that moment, we read in the Bible later on that God's Spirit leaves Saul in that time. And he no longer has the power and the grace of God to do his work effectively. The very next chapter, in 1 Samuel chapter 16, we meet one of the most influential men in biblical history. In fact, if you've never been to church, or you've only grown up, going to church a few times in your life, you don't know very many people in the Bible. Chances are you know who this guy is that we're about to talk about. Probably the top 5 most well-known characters of the Bible. And so today, and for the next 9 weeks, we're going to look at the life of David. David, killer of Goliath, the writer of many psalms in the Bible. He was a king. He was the great-great-great-grandfather of Jesus, and he was also a shepherd as well. And so I'm going to take a little whirlwind tour of the first 2 chapters of 1 Samuel's account of David's life. And we encounter David for the very first time in 1 Samuel 16 today. All right? In 1 Samuel 16, the prophet Samuel has been moping around, so sad that he had to kind of give the bad news to Saul, that Saul can no longer be king. And so in chapter 16, verse 1, we read this. The Lord said to Samuel, how long will you grieve over Saul, since I have rejected him from being king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and go. I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided for myself a king from among his sons. So, this is exactly what Samuel does. He gets on his donkey, grabs his horn, grabs his oil, and off he goes. He goes to Jesse's home, and he's excited. He's gonna be able to anoint the next king of Israel. And Jesse lines up his 7 sons in front of Samuel. And the first one comes through, and he must have been a good-looking, strong man. And Samuel is confident, this is the one. God says, no, that's not the one. And one after the other, son after son, they all walk by Samuel, and he's excited. Who's going to be the next king of Israel? And every single time, God says, it's not him, it's not him. And finally, in verse 7, we get to a pretty interesting verse. In verse 7 of chapter 16, God speaks to Samuel. In the middle of this, I don't know, I wish I could have been there that day. I don't know if it was like a beauty pageant, the guys would kind of walk out on stage and twirl around, and if it was more of an interview kind of tell me about your greatest weaknesses, your greatest strengths. I don't know how it looked, but in the middle of all of this, God speaks to Samuel, and he says to Samuel, verse 7, do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. And with these words, he's indicating that there's one more son yet to be seen, and there's something special in the heart of this son that distinguishes him from his brothers. Turns out that the final son is David, and David hasn't even been invited to the shindig. All right, his application didn't even make it across the desk of Samuel. All right, he doesn't even get a call back. And so finally, Samuel says to the king, "Are there any more sons? It's not one of these." And the father says, and this is kind of funny. Let's read it in verse 11 to 13. Then Samuel said to Jesse, "Are all your sons here?" And he said, "Well, there remains yet the youngest, but behold, he is keeping the sheep." Just let that stick in your mind. He is keeping the sheep. And Samuel said to Jesse, "Send and get him, for we will not sit down till he comes here." And he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy and had beautiful eyes and was handsome. And the Lord said, "Arise, anoint him, for this is he." Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward. And Samuel rose up and went to Ramah. Okay. What we come to realize in this text is that God's criteria for a calling and for leadership are different than ours. You might look at your life and you may see not very much. You might not have had a great GPA in college. You may not have worked your way up the corporate ladder very far. And you feel perhaps inadequate, but God says, I don't look at the outward appearance, I look at the heart. I see potential. He looks at us and he doesn't see someone who is smart and witty and handsome. He looks at us and sees our heart. Says there's something inside of you that indicates whether you will be a good follower, if you'll be a good leader, that shows me what kind of potential you have as my son or my daughter. We're going to be talking a lot about shepherding and sheep throughout this series. And I bought this book. It's called The Shepherd's Look at Psalm 23, and it's written by a shepherd who had flocks for many years. And he tells a story in this book that he once had a ewe, which is a female sheep, and this ewe was just gorgeous, apparently, as far as sheep go, all right? And had a strong constitution. He said the sheep had bright eyes. I don't know what that means, but this sheep had it. It consistently gave birth to strong, healthy lambs. Like, this was a top-notch sheep. The kind of sheep if you took this sheep to the county fair, whatever they do at the county fair to say that this sheep is better than the other sheep, this sheep had it. And so, anyhow, this sheep, though, it tells in his book, had one major problem, and that was it just was a fence walker. It would always run the fences looking for a hole. And this guy's pasture bordered the ocean, so it would wait till low tide, and it would run out and try to scoot around the end of the fence. And even though the pastures on the other side of the fence were brown and not very healthy and not enticing at all, that sheep wanted to be anywhere but in the care of the shepherd. And not only was that sheep causing the shepherd a lot of headache because he had to chase it all the time, it began to teach its lambs to do the same thing. And so other lambs, its own its own sheepies, would follow it out and through the hole in the fence, and it just became a problem. Finally, the shepherd had to get rid of his sheep, even though it met all the outward characteristics of being a top-notch sheep. He had to get rid of it because there was a character deficiency that kept that sheep from being entirely useful and was leading the other sheep astray. And I think it's important to just recognize that God cares deeply about our souls. What does he see when he looks at your soul? Does he see someone whose character he can form, who is teachable and humble? That's what he sees in the life of David. And in the life of David, in this moment, he puts an incredible calling on his life. David is not expecting this. David is the least of his brothers out in the pasture, but he gets this unexpected calling. And immediately God's Spirit rushes upon David. But what's fascinating is what happens next. They don't pick David up on their shoulders, carry him around on a chair. 3 cheers for King David, hip hip hooray. Probably the other brothers were really jealous and upset at this point. No, David goes back out to be a shepherd again. All right? Samuel doesn't even give him any directions. He's just like, you're going to be the new king? All right, I got to get to Ramah. And off he goes. And David is left with no specific nature of what he's supposed to do next. And so he goes back out and tends the sheep again. And I just thought that sometimes in our lives, there are years between God puts a calling on us and when we actually find that, we find that we realize that calling, when it comes to pass for us. There's years between his anointing and his kingship. Even though God anointed him, there was still some character formation that needed to happen in David's life before he was ready to be the king. And God does the same for us. Sometimes he puts a calling on us, and then he puts us in a season of preparation. We may think it's boring. Oh, good, God called me. Now I want to go do something, but God sends us out to hang out with sheep for a while longer. All right, so that's our introduction to David. We move on from there to a really fascinating in-between saga before we get to a final story. In chapter 16, from verses 14 to 23, something happens in David's life that probably even confuses him more. David, if you remember, Saul, who was king, the Spirit of God left him after he disobeyed the Lord. And the Bible says that he begins to be tormented by a harmful spirit. A harmful spirit would come in and just make Saul's life miserable. We don't exactly know what it was. Was it mental distress? Was it emotional anxiety? I don't know what happened to Saul. All I know is that he is anxious all the time. And one of his servants came up with a great idea. They said, Saul, let's go find you just a killer harp player. So that whenever you're anxious and upset, we'll just get somebody who's really good on the harp, or the lyre, as it was called, and they come in, they can play some tunes, you'll feel so much better, right? Did you ever come in, maybe to church on a Sunday, you've had a bad week, you're kind of angry and just upset, and the worship music just kind of settles you. You get your heart in the right space. And so someone said, how about, let's try this, Saul. Let's just get some nice worship music going. They didn't have CDs back then, or Pandora. And so they just had to find someone who was really good on the harp. And somehow somebody knows of David. I don't know how, but one of these servants has heard of David, and apparently when David's out with the sheep, there's nothing to do except watch the sheep and play your lyre. And so they said, I've got a great guy for you. And so David, soon enough, finds himself in the service of Saul as a harp player. Look at this. In verse 19, we read this. Therefore Saul sent messengers to Jesse and said, send me David your son, who is with the sheep. There's that word again. How does he describe David? Well, he's the one that's out with the sheep. Send me David your son, who is with the sheep. And so Jesse does this. When the king asks for your son, you send your son. And so David leaves his father's sheep and goes and becomes a harp player for the man whose job he will someday have. Talk about a weird space to be in your life. He enters the service of Saul. Have you ever been in a weird situation and wondered what God was doing? I've been in some weird situations. Every Sunday morning. Between 9:30 and 12. And you just wonder, what is God doing? And yet, even in this, God was preparing David for the role he would one day have. Even while he was working in the service of the king whose job he would one day take. So this is kind of this in-between phase. So we read later that David seems to split his time between playing the harp for Saul. That's how they play it too, like that. The harp for Saul and watching the sheep in the wilderness. So he kind of go back and forth. Maybe it was just a weekend gig. I don't know. But that's what he does. And then in chapter 17, we read the story that catapults David into the national eye. Everyone hears and knows of David after chapter 17. If you know any stories of David, even if you've never grown up in church, you know this story of David, and that's the story of David and Goliath. All right, we're not going to read through it. I could preach a whole sermon just on this one story, but let me just kind of give you the highlights reel from it. All right. So David is going back and forth between working for Saul and working for his dad, watching the sheep, and Israel is constantly at war with the Philistines. And now the Philistine army has a new warrior. His name is Goliath. He's a giant of a man. He's imposing. He's terrifying. And Goliath likes to come out and throw down a challenge every day to the Israelites. So the Israelites would form their battle lines on one side of the hill, and the Philistines would be on the other side, and Goliath would come out, and this was his challenge. He would say this: "You send out one man to fight me. If your man beats me, we will all, as a nation, become your servants. But if I beat your man, then you, as a nation, will become my servants." This was an actual way that sometimes they would do warfare back in the day to avoid just massive amounts of bloodshed. But nobody wanted to go fight Goliath. He was terrifying. He's huge. I mean, you can read in the Bible the description of his armor and his weaponry. And so all of Israel is terrified except for David. David one day gets his dad and says, "David, take some food to your brothers." You know, the 7 brothers who were bigger and stronger, but who didn't get the job of being king. You take some food to them. They're on the front lines of battle. And so David does this. He takes food to his brothers. And while he's there, Goliath comes out and throws down his daily challenge. "Send someone out to fight me." And all the Israelites are terrified, and they're scared and shaking in their boots. And David, though, hears the story differently. He says, "Why isn't anybody fighting this man?" And in the strength that God gives him, decides, I'm gonna go fight him. And so pretty soon he finds himself talking to Saul, and we'll pick up the story here in 1 Samuel 17, 33 to 37. All right, so he's in front of Saul. He's asking for permission to go and fight Goliath. And Saul said to David, "You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are but a youth, and he has been a man of war from his youth." But David said to Saul, "Your servant used to keep sheep." Well, that's a great resume builder, right? I want to go fight this Goliath, and the first thing I'm going to list on my resume is I used to watch the sheep. But he goes on from there. "And when there came a lion or a bear and took a lamb from the flock, I went after him and struck him and delivered it out of his mouth. And if he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and struck him and killed him." That's impressive. "Your servant has struck down both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God." And David said, "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." And Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you." In that moment, David draws on, this is fascinating to me, David draws on his shepherding experience and God's faithfulness to him in that time for encouragement and strength to go fight Goliath. All of a sudden, those years with the sheep are starting to make sense. All that time he spent playing the harp in the pasture, watching the sheep, and protecting and defending them starts to come into a clearer light for him. And so you know the story. David goes out to fight Goliath. Goliath mocks David and says, "Why did you just send this scrawny little boy to fight me?" And David boldly says, "I'm going to come against you in the name of the Lord." And he grabs a sling and some stones and hurls a rock at Goliath's head, and down he goes. And he runs out, takes Goliath's own sword, and chops off Goliath's head. It's a very family-friendly story. And yet we all learned it in Sunday school. On a flannel graph board. It was great. Anyway, so that's the end of Goliath, and at this moment, David becomes incredibly popular. All right, everybody loves David, and as a result of this, he becomes a very prominent man in charge. Well, we're going to read on later on in future weeks about what happens. Nothing is the same in David's life after this event. He is never a shepherd again that we know of after this event. We read a lot about David's life there in those 2 chapters, from this underestimated shepherd to a Goliath killer. And years later, David is an older man. We don't know how much older he was, but he seems to have a maturity in his words as he reflects on his life. And he's sitting down at one point and writing a psalm to God about how God has been faithful and good to him and has brought him through so many challenges in his life. And as he's trying to describe what it's like, what his relationship with God is like, the best description he has of God is found in that he says, "God, you are like a shepherd to me." In Psalm 23:1, we read this: "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Let's say those words together, all together, right? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. What we're going to do over the next 9 weeks is we're going to look at a portion of this psalm, of this relationship of David being a shepherd and God being David's shepherd, and then illustrate it with stories from David's life, because he lived a remarkable, crazy life. And I think it'll be good. And one of my hopes is that if you've never memorized any Bible verses in your life, this could be the very first time for you. So as a church, my hope is by the end of this series, we'll be able together to, without the words, say the whole Psalm 23 together as a prayer of reflection back to the Lord. God was David's shepherd, and God provided for David in every season of his life. As a shepherd, when he was alone and underestimated by his family, God provided all he needed. As a harp player for a king in an unusual and an awkward situation, God provided for David. And when he faced Goliath, in the face of insurmountable odds, David reflected on his life and said, God, you were a good shepherd to me. You provided all that I needed in every situation that I came across. Because the job of a shepherd is not always to keep the sheep in a perfect pen, in a perfect pasture. We'll read later that sometimes as sheep we follow our shepherd through the valley of the shadow of death. There are times when it will be troublesome and difficult, but the job of a shepherd is to provide for his sheep and to protect the sheep. And he does this over and over again in David's life, and he does it in your life. And I don't know what season you're in. Maybe you're in a waiting season. You feel like things just aren't happening quickly enough for you. Maybe you feel ignored like David. Maybe you're facing some giants. I would encourage you this week to meditate on the faithfulness of God. The Lord is your shepherd. You have no want. He will take care of you. He is a good shepherd who loves you deeply. So, one of the things I wanted to do to close this out, and if you're a visitor here today and you've never been to our church before, or have just started to come, you may wonder why we're making all these jokes about Dave and Bobby Lombard today. But let me just tell you about Dave and Bobby, because this is their last Sunday to worship with us here at the Commonplace. 5 years ago, almost to this date, I got a message from Bobby, and her message to me on Facebook was, first of all, does everybody who works at the coffee shop have to have a beard? It was an unusual way to open up her email. And then she says, hey, my husband and I are moving to the area, and we need somebody to help us unload when we get there. And if you will do this, if you can get some people, we'll give you a meal, or we'll make a donation, or anything that you deem appropriate, she says. Well, I took full advantage of that last clause. And over the next 5 years, Dave and Bobby became important members of our church. They served as an elder, director of our children's ministry. Dave managed the coffee shop. Many Bible studies were in their home. Many of you benefited from just a mentoring, loving relationship with the Lombards. And so that's what I deemed appropriate for them. And they have been, even after Bobby's employment at Lock Haven University ended, they continued to live in Lock Haven simply because they loved us and they loved this church community, and we love them so much. And so I don't want, in moments like this, it's best, I feel like as a pastor, we just need to recognize individuals like the Lombards who have been such an important part of our church. It's also important to recognize that we're going to miss them a lot. I'm not going to sit up here and say, oh, everything's going to be fine, guys. I mean, I trust in the faithfulness of God, but it's sad when we lose people that we love so much. They're moving back to Missouri to take care of Bobby's mother. We're going to miss them a lot, all right? And that's okay. It's all right. We're not going to be able to replace them. Obviously, we've got ministry positions that need to be filled, but we're never going to replace Bobby and Dave. And so I just want to pray for them today. In fact, if they want to come on up here, you can do it. I want to just tell us collectively as a church family that it's okay to be sad. It's okay to miss them, to love them as they move into a new season, because the Lord is their shepherd, and they will not want. He's going to take care of them, and He'll take care of us as well. So let's together as a church, let's all stand together as a church, and let's pray for the Lombards in this new season. Jesus, our hearts are a mixture today of just gratitude for the way that you provided for the Commonplace in a season when we needed some spiritual maturity and some like just a godly parenting influence in our church history, and you brought the Lombards along to fill that void. We love them deeply, and we're so grateful for the years we've spent alongside them in ministry and as friends. Our hearts are also sad today because we're going to lose them. In a physical sense, they move away. And so my prayer for them is that as they go, that they would feel all the grace and the love of Christ in their lives, that you would provide a new spiritual family for them to become involved in and to bless, just like they've blessed us for 5 years. Let them move into a new season where they can continue to be a blessing. I pray that you would raise up leaders in our church who can begin to fill the ministry roles that are going to be empty now, and I pray that you would help us to not view this as a setback, but as an opportunity as a church to move forward into even newer and better things. And so together, Lord, we celebrate the Lombards and their faithfulness to you and to our church, and we ask you the blessing on their lives. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, while you're standing, we'll ask the worship team to come on up and lead us in a couple of songs.
All right, so we'll just close out with one more song. get to go get your kiddos. Please.